Welcome to Consortium News. I'm Kathy Vogan.
And I'm Elizabeth Voss. We're here today with Saffrine Duggan, wife of the Australian pilot Dan Duggan, who will appear in the Federal Court of Australia this week in relation to an extradition request from the United States, which he is hoping to have overturned. His alleged offense centers around advanced flying lessons he gave at a South African flight academy in 2012 to foreign nationals, some of whom were Chinese.
Dan used to be a US citizen and he was a pilot in the Army until 2002. The secret grand jury indictment against him states that he didn't obtain a license from the US State Department to deliver the training. It also accuses him of being involved in the purchase of the school's plane before he was hired to give what amounts to 18 hours of lessons.
The problem with the indictment is that Duggan ceased being a US citizen on Australia Day 2012, January 26, which predates the flight lessons. Also, what he did was not a crime in Australia. Other Australians who delivered the same type of training have not been charged with anything. Duggan's defense team will argue that the US has no sovereign control over him and that there is an absence of dual criminality.
The problem with the process is that it is somewhat endless. Dan was arrested and placed in solitary confinement as a high-risk prisoner 3 years ago. He not only has a wife, but 6 children who have had very little contact with him, contrary to Article 3 and 9 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Dr. Paul Anthony Bowert, a practicing pediatrician with over 40 years' experience and lifetime fellow of the Royal Australasian College of Physicians, has said that he has, quote, very serious concerns for Dan Duggan's children's physical and mental health. Each of the 6 children is exhibiting unmistakable signs of stress and severe anxiety and is vulnerable to compounding ill health. The stress and trauma suffered by the children, including recurring nightmares, is also detailed in commentary by Mr. Duggan's wife, Saffrine, in submissions direct to the attorney.
The Duggan family has suffered enormously, both emotionally and financially, and we invite Saffrine to share their story. Saffrine, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Kathy and Elizabeth.
We've seen a few photographs recently, one of your children taking Dan's suit to the prison ahead of his hearing on Thursday. How are you all feeling?
We it's very complicated. Oh, sorry. I've had to explain the unimaginable to my kids, and whilst we are feeling good for the up and coming and hoping that the court system and our government will make the right choice and just let Dan come home to his children. It is also extremely nerve-wracking having to go through these phases with the legal system. When my husband was taken away, our world collapsed. And this isn't just about one person, it's about our whole family, and it's about our whole family's future. And I feel like we've been living in a constant state of emotional and financial emergency for 3 years now.
Yeah.
And it does take its toll. It's been taking its toll for that time period, and we're still living just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. The US has made it really difficult for the family to defend the case. It has requested that the Australian Federal Police freeze their assets. You guys are currently surviving off a part-time single parent wage and the kindness of lawyers. The amounts of money allegedly transferred to Dan for training services are relatively small. 3 short courses amounting to 18 hours. How does the US calculate that it has the right to take possession of your property?
We're still trying to understand that. We've been given no explanation. They have just taken the ability for me to be able to sell my home to be able to financially pay for our lawyers and help Dan and through this situation. So we're still trying to find answers for that. So, we're devastated. That financially just trying to crush a family that's trying to do the best they can in an unbearable situation. And it's terrible.
Do you feel somewhat betrayed by our government? I mean, this is 8 Australian citizens that are really suffering. Why do you think that the police and the government itself have just not really looked into this case better? Because frankly, this indictment, I don't want to get into the legal issues, but this indictment is a sham.
Absolutely. Look, it's from what I can see, and of course you'll be talking to lawyers, is that Dan was arrested under the Extradition Act and treaty, which are very archaic parts of our law system. And there's a reason that we can't just sort of stand up in court and have our day in court and let everyone know what's going on. And that's what really holds us back, is this extradition treaty and act that we have. Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's confusing because that's the extradition treaty of 1988, and
Yes.
in that treaty, there is a reciprocity of due process that is guaranteed. But
these are things that will be discussed definitely on Thursday, as you mentioned, the dual criminality, all of the things that seem quite obvious to us, and hopefully are explained better in our legal system for this whole case just to be thrown out. I mean, it's gone on for too long.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what I understand, back in 2012, Dan's business was in Tasmania, and he was conducting joy flights for tourists. Now,
Yes.
he got offered, some. I've done this myself, casual short course training in a different area, but you get these little courses that you go and you teach, and in his case, I think they were 6 hours each. In my case, as a casual broadcast trainer, they were 3 days each. But the thing is that before and after the training, you're totally dissociated from the school. How the hell did and it was clear that Dan's business was these joy flights down in Tasmania, that was well established. How the hell did they bend the information and make what he taught at a very reputable school? I mean, even the school has been impugned. What's really going on here? Is it political? Is it because we're supposed to hate China or something? Because some of these civilians that he was training were Chinese nationals. Is it a political thing in your view?
Yes, I think so. When Dan was doing this, there was a different relationship that we had with China. It was a different time frame but even before then, Dan was living in Tasmania, so there was no threat by the Chinese. I think now there is a different opinion on that with Australia and the US. So that all drives a line towards, politically things have changed.
Well, the thing is, the pressure seems to be coming from the United States, for there to be antagonism between Australia and China. And Australia has very mixed feelings because China is our major trading partner. So, that we resist. We cooperate. I think it was Albo, our Prime Minister, who said we cooperate where we can and disagree where we must.
Yes, so which is where I am wanting our Australian government and our Prime Minister to actually abide by what he's just spoken about, which is, please resist in this case Dan Duggan, who is an Australian citizen, on the ideas that it's thrown out in Australia. The extradition treaty itself, as we've said, is complicated, but the case itself should be looked into here in Australia before someone is just handed over to wherever their extradition treaty is heading towards.
Absolutely. And of course, this all came up in the Julian Assange case, and it was what killed the extradition in the first instance. Not only that he was a suicide risk, but also the appalling conditions in US prisons. And there were four principal witnesses of prison people. I believe in Dan's case, there is an affidavit from John Kiriakou.
Kiriakou, yes.
Who was the CIA whistleblower on torture. And, you know, for that, he was sentenced to 2 years in jail. He got out after 10 months, but, you know, he documents what it's like there. It's a hellhole. And, you know, to think that that's what is at risk here for a law-abiding Australian citizen who really hasn't done anything wrong under Australian law. Laws have changed a little bit now, but
hasn't
back
broken
then,
any Australian laws at all. And speaking of law abiding, the kids said to me when this first happened, Mama, why won't you call the police? Why won't you tell the police what is happening?
Yeah.
Because in their head, and they should, the police look after you, and the police are the ones that will, if something's going wrong, they help you. Now, you know, that's where it's very unexplainable. It's complicated how I tell my children that I can't call the police, that they've arrested him and they've taken him away.
Yeah. So can you tell me how you are really struggling financially? I know that. Can you tell us how people can help the family out?
Yes. Oh, thank you. We have a free Dan Duggan website, and on there details of how you can help us through donations. I'm a photographer, have been for 30 years, and I'm actually selling some of my artworks on there. If someone makes a donation, they can purchase some prints from me. I mean, we're sort of trying everything at the moment. We have to keep going. This is important to our family, my children, and we just have to keep going. But the free Dan Duggan website is a wealth of information, and you can donate through there.
Okay. I saw a very sad photo not so long ago. One of the houses, you're probably still not living there, but it was one you could have sold to pay for the legal fees.
Yes.
That people had broken in and vandalized it.
Yes, because we can't live there. We live with my father, who has graciously opened his home up to myself and the children, and we live here with 4 kids at the moment. 2 have gone off to uni.
Yeah.
And it's close quarters, not being able to live in our home, not being able to sell our home, and also I can't borrow against it.
Right.
There is a caveat on it. I can't borrow against it. I can't support my family enough to go through this process, and we can't sell it.
Yeah.
So it's crushing.
I'm going to pass you over to our co-host Elizabeth. Elizabeth, maybe you can talk a little bit about this problem what really made the Julian Assange case fall flat on its face. It was about the fact that he was going to be barred from constitutional protection by way of his nationality. Isn't there an irony here that Dan, who was a US citizen by birth but is no longer now, might have the same blockage from constitutional protection? I'll pass it over to you, Elizabeth. You know all
absolutely.
the details.
No, it is really interesting, and it's interesting because in Dan's case, they're having to argue that he was a U.S. citizen. Obviously, at the time, they claim, although it looks like he wasn't. And then at the same time, it sounds to me, from what I've read and from what you'll have said, it sounds to me like they want to then strip those protections from him if they do get him into their hands. So it is a little bit similar in a little bit of a reversal sort of a sense. But I wanted to ask you, Saffrine, to talk about a little bit about the what contact between Dan and the kids looks like. Is he how much he's able to see them? Because I understand it's not enough. It's not anywhere near enough to have a relationship with them.
He has, we have 10-minute phone calls with Dan that are timed, and then a beeping occurs. And so they're all quite expensive for us too. It's not a local call. We actually pay, a couple of dollars for a call, one call, because we're the distance of where Dan is. So it is unrealistic to think Dan can talk to the kids for multiple times in a week. We talk to him, we try and talk to him throughout the week to let Dan know. Dan can only call us, so we can't call him. If we miss his phone call at all, that's it. He mightn't be able to call back at all. I mean, it's exhausting having to go through that process of communication. And I try to do the best I can with the kids and the contact, but it's not enough. We make we have a visit with him. We're allowed to visit him on a weekend, but with the kids' sports and commitments that I'm trying to help with their emotions and dealing with things in teams, I have to make a choice whether the kids play sport or whether they go and visit their father. And that's a terrible choice every weekend that I make. So yeah, the we're holding on to hope and driven by love, but it is very hard.
I can't imagine. I know that in the Assange case, as Kathy just brought up, when Stella would bring the kids to see their father, I mean, obviously they had to go through this horrible search process, very dehumanizing process to even see him. Is it similar for Dan?
Yes, we go through a X-ray machine. We go through multiple closed off gates, steel bars, barbed wire facilities, where Dan was in solitary confinement for 19 months of this. So coming up this Thursday, when Dan's case will be heard in the federal court, it will be 1,092 days that he would have been, and 19 months of that was solitary confinement. I actually didn't take the children to Sydney when he was in Silverwater. It was just too horrendous when it first started. He was there for 6 months, so they didn't see him at all. He had white overalls on backwards that were all cable tied from his neck up with so it was just, I mean, I could barely handle it, let alone the vision of that being their dad in their heads. So there was a long period of time where the kids didn't see Dan. And so yes, that's been very hard. It's different now on a weekend, but I still have all of those visions of what we've gone through and we are so unsure of where this is going to take Dan. If he gets to the US, all the things that John Kiriakou talk about in the prison system over there, it is very, very dangerous and concerning. And Australia, I don't think, can send someone like that, like Dan, Australian citizen, to an unknown possibility in the US. I mean, this is an Australian citizen. There should be sovereignty here. We should be standing up for our Australian citizens.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
How is Dan's mental health holding up?
He is, um, it's very hard for him as there is an enduring uncertainty. So he, I think, really, he is holding it together for his children. And look, he's devastated. with all of the information that will be given to the federal court on Thursday, there is just bucket loads of information that show that this should be thrown out, that it should be stopped here. So with that in mind, I am feeling very hopeful that this is where our journey will stop.
Yes, and the other good thing is that you have Bernard Collaery.
Yes, we do.
And Bernard Collaery was the former Attorney General of the Australian Capital Territory. And he's had a bit of trouble in the past as well himself. Crazy stuff. That's another story I don't want to go into, but I don't think you could get anyone better. And his submission is really detailed, absolutely brilliant, and it demolishes this secret grand jury misinformed case.
Yes, that's right. It's been heavily worked on with Dan being involved too with it, and Christopher Parkins and Bernard Collaery, and they will all be presenting that on Thursday.
Great.
So,
I'll be there.
oh, good, good.
Yep.
So our family will be there. We will be taking time off school. We have supporters who will be there, and we are just hoping that we can walk through the other side of this storm, and yeah, fingers crossed, and plenty of prayers are happening.
Yes. There's a lot of Australians behind you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to thank, as a moment for a minute, that so many of our supporters who have helped us thus far. I just feel just so thankful that, and Dan does too, and the kids, I tell them, the donations, everything that has come, we get letters, we get cards, it's just been amazing, and it makes me give back. I do swimming for Cancer with Kids. I make such a different role now, I think, more than what I did after the generosity I've received. So it makes a big difference. The letters that go to the Attorney General, to our Prime Minister, people are writing to them saying that this is just not fair. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah. Saffrine Duggan, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Elizabeth.